In a quiet, unassuming interview, Elon Musk leaned forward and whispered 5 words about Jesus that stunned everyone, including Karoline Leavitt. Her professional poise cracked. Tears followed. The cameras kept rolling. "Jesus isn't a theory," Elon said. "He's truth itself." What he revealed next left the entire nation breathless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Golden sunlight streamed through the wide windows of the studio, casting a warm glow across the polished wooden table where Karoline Leavitt sat, pen poised, recorder blinking quietly beside her notes. Elon Musk was seated opposite her, calm, collected, every bit the visionary entrepreneur the world had come to know. The room was quiet, almost reverent, as if anticipating something unspoken. The early minutes of the interview followed a familiar rhythm. Updates on SpaceX, reflections on AI regulation, questions about the latest developments in sustainable energy. Karoline asked with practiced ease, and Elon responded with his usual mix of technical insight and wit. Then the atmosphere shifted. Elon's smile faded. His posture straightened. He reached for his water, took a sip, and set the glass down with deliberate care. There was a pause, one that Karoline didn't interrupt. She recognized the moment instinctively, the kind of silence that meant something important was coming. "I need to share something," Elon said, his voice quieter, more grounded. Karoline leaned forward slightly, her pen pausing mid-air. "Jesus changed everything for me, Karoline." The sentence hung there, suspended in the stillness. Karoline blinked, caught off guard. Her next question came slowly but with unmistakable sincerity. "Where did this begin?" she asked. Elon took a breath and began. Elon leaned back slightly, his gaze thoughtful. "About 6 months ago," he began, "I picked up the Gospel of John. Not for any religious reason. Honestly, I just wanted to understand the historical impact of Christianity. I approached it like I would any ancient text, as literature, nothing more." Karoline nodded, listening intently. "But then I came across a line I'd heard before, but never truly noticed." His eyes met hers. "Jesus said, 'I am the way, the truth, and the life.'" He paused. And for some reason, that phrase didn't just sound poetic this time. It confronted me. It challenged the very foundation of how I've always searched for truth, through reason, logic, and observable data. Karoline tilted her head slightly, sensing the weight behind his words. "I've spent my life pursuing what's real," Elon continued, "in physics, in math, in engineering. But here was someone claiming not just to speak truth, but to be truth. That's not a metaphor you can casually dismiss. It demands something from you." His voice softened. I had to decide if Jesus was who he claimed to be, or if I was just afraid of the answer. Karoline sat still, her pen forgotten. "What answer did you find?" she whispered. Elon folded his hands, speaking with a calm conviction that carried both weight and wonder. "All my life, I've relied on reason," he said. "Science, logic, data, they've always been my tools. From the first time I took apart a computer to building rockets and neural networks, it's always been about understanding how the world works. Measurable, predictable, explainable." Karoline sat quietly, taking it in. "So when I started reading about Jesus," Elon continued, "I assumed I'd find teachings on morality, maybe some historical wisdom. But that's not what I found. What I found was a man who didn't just claim to teach truth, he claimed to be truth. He didn't point people toward God. He said, 'If you've seen me, you've seen the Father.' That's a claim to divinity, not just inspiration, incarnation." He paused to let that sit. "I approached it the way I approach everything else, systematically. I studied historical context, cross-referenced eyewitness accounts, analyzed how his words and actions aligned. I weighed the possibility of myth, legend, manipulation. And the deeper I went, the more I realized this wasn't something I could just explain away. Karoline's eyes narrowed slightly, not in doubt, but in focused attention. There are only three possibilities, Elon said. Either Jesus was lying, completely delusional, or telling the truth. He doesn't leave room for middle ground. The just a good teacher option disappears the moment you actually read his claims. He leaned forward again. If someone tells you they're the source of life and the final judge of the world, you have to respond. You can't nod politely and move on. Karoline's voice was quiet. So what did you do? Elon exhaled slowly. I wrestled, not because I wanted it to be false, but because I was afraid it might be true. And if it's true... He paused, his expression steady. I didn't expect to believe, but truth leaves no room for convenience. Karoline shifted in her chair, her tone soft but probing. Have you thought about the fallout from all this? I mean, the media response, your shareholders, even public trust in your companies. You're not exactly known for conventional beliefs, but talking openly about Jesus is a different level of controversy. Elon gave a slight smile, not defensive but assured. I've thought about it, a lot, and I know the risks. But at some point you realize that perception is temporary. Truth, on the other hand, endures. And if Jesus really is who he says he is, then truth matters more than public opinion. It matters more than stock prices. It matters more than comfort. Karoline looked down at her notes, clearly affected by his conviction. Was there a moment when that became crystal clear to you? Elon's eyes seemed to focus somewhere distant. Yes, there was. He shifted slightly, elbows resting on his knees. Last week, I visited a children's hospital in Houston. It wasn't for press, no cameras. I just wanted to be present. I've seen enough headlines for a lifetime. I didn't want this to be another photo op. Karoline nodded silently, sensing the story's importance. I was introduced to a 10-year-old boy named Michael, Elon continued. He's battling leukemia, stage 4, and yet he was radiant. Not in denial, not naive, but filled with this kind of peace that I can't explain. He had these incredible drawings of rockets all over his hospital walls, detailed, like schematics. When I walked in, he didn't ask for an autograph or a selfie. He said, "Mr. Musk, do you want to see my spaceship design?" Elon chuckled gently at the memory. I told him I'd love to. He flipped through his notebook with this intense focus, explaining how his rocket would carry people to Mars, how it would recycle oxygen more efficiently than anything on Earth. It was brilliant. But then, Elon's voice caught slightly. He stopped, looked up at me, and asked, "Mr. Musk, do you know Jesus?" Just like that, direct, clear, no hesitation. Karoline blinked, her lips parting in surprise. I told him I was learning, that I was just beginning to understand who Jesus really was. Elon took a slow breath. Michael smiled and said, "He's been my best friend since I was 4. He stays with me during the hard stuff." Then he reached out and asked if he could pray for me. "You?" Karoline asked, eyebrows raised. Elon nodded. That's what floored me. I came to encourage him, to offer support. But here he was, tiny, fragile, fighting for his life, offering me comfort. He held my hand and prayed like Jesus was sitting right next to us. No big words, no drama, just honesty. Karoline was silent, her eyes moist. Where he finished, Elon said, voice now low. He looked me in the eye and said, "Don't be afraid. He has big plans for you." Karoline leaned forward, visibly moved. "What did you do?" "I cried," Elon admitted. Not publicly, not dramatically. But that night, when I got home, I let go of something I didn't even know I was carrying. That child's faith, his peace, it pierced through all my defenses. He paused. He had no idea what I'd been struggling with, the weight of expectations, the fear that no matter what I built, it might not be enough. And yet, he said exactly what I needed to hear. A silence settled between them, and I believed him. Elon added softly, "For the first time in my life, I believed that maybe I wasn't alone in this." Elon's hands rested loosely in his lap now, his posture less guarded than before. The quiet in the room felt different, less professional, more sacred. He took another breath and continued, "I've sat across from world leaders, scientists, engineers, and some of the brightest thinkers alive. I've been challenged on policy, ethics, sustainability, innovation, you name it. But no one, not once, has looked directly at me and spoken to the exact place where I hide my fears." Karoline didn't speak. Her eyes stayed on him, glassy but steady. Michael's words weren't just kind, they were surgical. It was like he reached in and named something I hadn't dared to say out loud. That, I'm afraid. Not just of failing publicly or of letting my companies down, but something deeper. He paused. I've built entire industries to help humanity avoid extinction. Yet underneath it all, I've carried this private question: what if none of it matters? What if I save the world, but lose myself in the process? He looked up, locking eyes with Karoline. Michael didn't know any of that. I hadn't said a word about my internal struggle, but when he said, "Jesus told me not to be afraid anymore, that he has big plans for you," Karoline reached slowly for her glass of water, more to steady herself than to drink. "That sounds incredibly personal." "It was," Elon said. "It is. And it wasn't just emotional, it was accurate." He didn't guess, he knew. It was like he'd opened a letter I hadn't even written yet. He leaned back slightly, eyes still clouded by memory. "I've read thousands of articles about myself, heard endless opinions, critiques, predictions. But a 10-year-old boy, facing death with a smile, spoke more truth into my life in 5 minutes than all the world's press combined." Karoline's voice was soft. "So, what did you do after that moment?" "I went home and sat in silence," Elon answered, "for hours, not processing like I usually do, not mapping systems or weighing outcomes. Just still, listening for something I couldn't explain." He folded his hands, looking down briefly. "I realized I'd been investigating Jesus like a project, dissecting him, analyzing, measuring impact. But that night I realized how backwards that was. This wasn't a theory to solve, it was a person to know." Karoline blinked slowly, her expression thoughtful. "I stopped reading scripture like it was a textbook," Elon said quietly, "and I started reading it like a letter addressed to me. Every sentence, Jesus talking not just to the world, but to me. Every challenge, every promise, every moment of grace. It was personal." He sat in that for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. And suddenly he said, "It wasn't about having all the answers anymore. It was about knowing I wasn't alone in asking the questions. It was about trust, about surrender, which, honestly, has never come easily to me." Karoline leaned forward slightly. "And now?" "Now," Elon said, "I still have questions, but I also have peace. Not a peace that ignores the weight I carry, but one that walks with me through it." He turned his head slightly, as if looking inward. "That's when I stopped investigating Jesus and started knowing him." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full. Elon was quiet for a moment, his hands resting flat against his thighs. His eyes dropped slightly, as if revisiting something too delicate to rush. "2 days before this interview," he said, "I did something I haven't done in years. I went to visit the grave of my son." Karoline sat still, not wanting to interrupt. Hal died when he was just an infant, Elon continued, his voice lower now. I've spoken about it publicly, only in the vaguest terms, but I rarely allow myself to go there emotionally. The grief was too vast, too unsolvable. I buried it, just like we buried him. He paused. But something stirred in me after meeting Michael. That same night, I felt pulled to go back to the place where my questions about God began, even if I hadn't recognized it at the time. Karoline watched him closely. I went alone, no security detail, no one even knew I was there. I just stood by the small stone marker, surrounded by silence and wind. For a long time, I didn't speak. I didn't cry, I just stood there. And then, something happened. His voice cracked slightly, and he took a moment to collect himself. It wasn't audible, he said, but I felt it, a presence, like someone else was standing there with me. And then I heard something, not in my ears, but in my spirit. He looked up at Karoline, eyes damp. It said, "He is in my care until you join him." Karoline's hand moved instinctively to her chest. I know how that sounds, Elon continued. Believe me, I've spent my life dismissing things like this, but that moment, those words, they weren't mine. They didn't come from my mind. They didn't follow any thought process I was having, and yet, they brought me the one thing I hadn't had in years. He paused. Peace. The room remained still. Not a sound outside. No shifting of paper. Only presence. For the first time, Elon said slowly, I didn't just accept the loss. I entrusted it. I believed that my son wasn't gone into nothingness, but was being held, watched. Karoline could barely hold back tears now. That moment didn't erase the pain, he added, but it gave it meaning. It gave it a horizon, and that changed everything. Elon reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn Bible. It was creased along the edges, clearly read many times over. He opened it slowly to a page marked with multiple tabs and handwritten notes. I keep this with me now, he said, flipping to a passage and tracing it with his finger. There's one verse that's been on repeat in my heart for weeks. He looked up and read it aloud. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Karoline swallowed hard. That line, Elon continued, has been haunting me, in the best way. Because for so long, I thought my purpose was to build the future, to take humanity to Mars, to solve Earth's biggest challenges. And maybe that's still part of it. But maybe the real mission is to carry light into the places that feel hopeless. He closed the Bible gently. If I've found the light, he said quietly, why would I keep it hidden? Elon sat up straighter now, his voice steadier, filled with quiet conviction. A few days ago, he began, I finalized the formation of a foundation. It's not a press stunt, and it's not designed for tax strategy or PR control. It's about impact. Deep, lasting, human impact. Karoline leaned in, her pen barely touching the paper. I've allocated $5 billion of my personal wealth to launch this, Elon continued. Not to build churches, not to promote denominations, not even to support traditional religious organizations. The foundation's goal is to take the heart of Jesus's teachings, love, truth, dignity, justice, and apply them to the most critical issues facing our world today. Karoline's eyebrows lifted, but she said nothing. Elon kept going. We're talking about funding clean water access, mental health services, restorative justice programs, safe housing for the homeless, rehabilitation for trafficking victims, not through a religious lens, but through a redemptive one. He paused, then added, Jesus didn't come to create religion. He came to restore humanity. He touched lepers, welcomed outcasts, defended the poor. He showed that every person matters, no matter how society labels them. Karoline nodded slowly, visibly moved. I still believe in technology, Elon said, But technology without values becomes tyranny. AI without ethics, energy without stewardship, medicine without compassion. Those things don't save us, they control us. That's why the foundation will focus on integrating moral wisdom into scientific advancement. We'll fund ethical tech, sustainable agriculture, trauma-informed education, practical solutions rooted in love. His voice rose just slightly. Real love. Not vague sentimentality, but the kind of love that costs something. The kind that steps into pain and says, "I'm not leaving." That's what Jesus modeled. And if we don't bring that into the future we're building, then we're just advancing the machinery of despair. Karoline took a long breath, absorbing every word. There will be critics, Elon said. I know that. People will say I've gone soft, or that I'm trying to remake my image. But the truth is, I don't care how it looks. I care what it changes. He paused, meeting her eyes. And love, real love, creates lasting change. Karoline sat silently across from Elon, her notepad resting idly in her lap. The questions she had prepared, dozens of them, typed out and carefully structured, now felt irrelevant. This interview had turned into something much deeper, something more human than political strategy or public image. The air in the studio felt still, as if time had slowed just long enough to make room for truth. She looked up at Elon, who was now calm, composed, but unmistakably changed. The man across from her wasn't just the innovator she had expected to meet, the relentless problem solver of Earth and Mars, but someone who had wrestled with eternity and come back with peace in his eyes. Karoline took a breath. "What do you want the world to know?" she asked softly. Elon didn't hesitate. His words came slowly, but each one landed with weight. That Jesus is more than history. He's more than a set of teachings. He's more than a name we've gotten used to hearing in vague ways. He's real. He's alive. And he's what we've been missing. The simplicity of his answer stunned her. No rehearsed statement, no qualifiers, just conviction. Karoline set her pen down and didn't pick it back up. She was no longer writing a story. She was witnessing one. "I think a lot of people are searching," she said quietly, "for meaning, for hope, for something deeper." Elon nodded. So was I. I've spent my life building for the future, trying to fix what's broken in our systems, our planet, even our thinking. But I had no idea how broken I was inside until I met the one who could actually heal it. Karoline felt emotion rising in her chest. Her voice cracked just slightly as she whispered, "Thank you." Elon gave a small, reflective smile. "It's not about me," he said. "It's about what's true." Then, after a moment of silence, he added something even softer. His voice almost disappeared beneath the hum of the studio lights. "Truth didn't just set me free," he said. "It gave me home." This inspiring story isn't about changing opinions, it's about changing hearts. It's about a man known for machines discovering something deeper than code, deeper than rockets, deeper than space. Elon Musk didn't just speak about belief. He invited the world to pause, to listen, and to consider that maybe the answers we seek aren't only found in data or design, but in truth itself. In a world that often equates power with silence and influence with neutrality, Elon chose to speak. He chose faith over fear, truth over image, and meaning over convenience. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. If truth demands a cost, Elon says in closing, I'll pay it. These aren't the words of a man seeking attention. They're the words of a man who found peace in a promise bigger than himself. And now he's not trying to convince the world. He's simply trying to share what changed his. If this inspiring story moved you, share it. Let the light spread. One life, one word, one act of courage at a time. Because sometimes, the most revolutionary thing we can do is to believe, and then to live like it matters.